most dangerous place in the Maldives did not look dangerous from above. It looked like paradise. Blue water, white sand, a boat resting quietly over a channel in Vavu Atoll. The kind of scene people travel halfway around the world to see. But below that calm surface, 5 divers entered a cave where sunlight could not follow them. And somewhere inside that darkness, the way back disappeared. They were not supposed to die there. They were scientists, divers, ocean people. People who knew the sea better than most. They had spent years studying it, protecting it, and trusting it. But on May 14th, 2026, the ocean gave them a problem that experience alone could not solve. The cave was known as the Kunu Kandu, also called Thingwana Kandu. From the outside, it was just another hidden feature in a country famous for its reefs and channels. But underwater caves are not like normal dive sites. They do not just ask if you can swim. They ask if you can stay calm when every instinct in your body is telling you to escape. Because in open water, if something goes wrong, the answer is simple. You go up. In a cave, up is not the surface. Up might be rock. Up might be a ceiling. Up might be the wrong direction. And if the exit is behind you, but you no longer know where behind is, the ocean becomes a locked room. The group had been traveling aboard the MV Duke of York, a liveaboard yacht used for diving expeditions in the Maldives. On board were researchers, divers, and guests connected to marine science and underwater exploration. Among them was Monica Montefalcone, a marine ecology professor from the University of Genoa. She had dedicated much of her life to the ocean, studying marine environments and the changing health of underwater ecosystems. Her daughter, Georgia Salmaco, was with her. There was also Federico Gualtieri, a marine biologist, Murio Odenno, a researcher, and Gianluca Benedetti, a diving instructor connected to the operation. They were not strangers to the water. That is what makes the story feel so unsettling. When inexperienced people get into trouble underwater, the explanation can seem easy, even if it is tragic. But when people with knowledge, training, and confidence disappear inside a cave, the question becomes darker. What did they believe they were entering? And what changed once they were inside? The dive site itself was already beyond normal limits. The entrance to the cave was around 55 to 58 meters below the surface. That is far past the 30-meter recreational diving limit in the Maldives. At that depth, everything becomes more serious. Air is consumed faster. The body absorbs more gas under pressure. Thinking can become slower. Time becomes expensive. A dive that might feel manageable in shallow water can become unforgiving when it happens deep, inside rock, with no direct route to the surface. The cave began with a large first chamber. That kind of space can create a dangerous illusion. It can feel open. It can feel like a cavern rather than a trap. A diver can still see structure, space, perhaps even some light from the entrance. But from that first chamber, a tunnel led deeper, and beyond that tunnel was a second chamber. This second chamber had no natural light, not low light, not dim light, no natural light. In a cave like that, your world becomes the beam from your torch. Everything outside it stops existing. The second chamber also had a sandy bottom. That detail sounds small until you understand what it means underwater. Sand and sediment can sit quietly for years, but disturb it with a fin, a hand, a rushed movement, or a panicked kick, and it lifts into the water. At first, it may look like smoke, then a cloud, then nothing. A cave that was visible seconds earlier can turn into a wall of white. Your torch reflects back at you. The exit vanishes. Other divers disappear even if they are close. In cave diving, losing visibility is not just frightening. It is a technical emergency. At some point inside the Kunu Kandu, the group did not return. What happened in the exact moments after that remains under investigation. There are things we know, things we can responsibly infer, and things that should not be turned into drama just because they are unknown. Dan Europe later released a preliminary reconstruction. It did not claim to know every decision made by the divers, but it described the cave environment and the recovery findings. The divers had gone beyond the first chamber through the tunnel and toward the second chamber. A side tunnel branched from that second chamber, and inside that branch, all 4 missing divers were later found in the same area. Benedetti, the instructor, was recovered earlier near the cave entrance area. That separation created one of the most haunting parts of the case. Was he trying to get out? Was he trying to get help? Was he separated from the others during the confusion? Those questions cannot be answered with certainty from the outside, but the layout alone tells a chilling story. 4 people together, deep in a side passage, one closer to the way out, and between them, darkness, depth, and a cave floor that could erase visibility with a single mistake. From the surface, the emergency became a nightmare for rescuers. This was not a missing diver in open water. This was an overhead environment at depth with unknown visibility and bodies believed to be inside a cave system. Every person who entered to search for them was entering the same trap. The first recovery efforts began with Maldivian forces. Among those who joined the mission was Mohamed Mahoudi, a military diver with the Maldives National Defense Force. He was not one of the original 5. He went in after them during the recovery operation. He suffered decompression sickness. In diving, decompression sickness is one of the fears that sits behind every deep dive. Under pressure, gases dissolve into the body. If the ascent is too fast, too complicated, or the exposure too severe, bubbles can form inside tissue and blood. Sometimes it is survivable, sometimes it is not. Mahodi was taken for treatment. He died. The tragedy had now claimed 6 lives, 5 inside or near the cave, 1 trying to bring them back. After that, the operation had to change. Courage was not enough. Local effort was not enough. This required divers trained specifically for deep cave recovery, with equipment built for a place where a mistake could create another victim. Dan Europe helped coordinate an international response. A Finnish technical cave diving team arrived: Sami Pakarinen, Jenny Westerlund, and Patrick Grö Enqvist. Their mission was not a rescue anymore, it was recovery, and that changes everything. There is no race against time for survival. There is only the careful, heavy work of bringing people home without losing anyone else. They prepared closed-circuit rebreathers, systems that recycle breathing gas and allow long, controlled dives. They used underwater scooters to move efficiently through the cave. They carried redundant life support systems because in cave diving, one failure cannot be allowed to become the end. They planned lines, rows, gas decompression, documentation, and body recovery. Nothing could be improvised. On the first major technical dive, the team entered the cave at Takunu Kandu. They inspected the system. They assessed the conditions. They passed through the first chamber, into the tunnel, and toward the second chamber, where natural light disappeared. There, they identified the additional tunnel branching off from the second chamber, and inside that area, they found the 4 missing divers. Together, the discovery answered one question, but opened others. They had not drifted away. They had not surfaced somewhere else. They had not been missed in open water. They were inside the cave, in the same place, beyond a path that somehow became impossible to reverse. Dan Europe's preliminary assessment was careful. Based on the available elements, it was presumed the divers were unable to find their way back to the exit, most likely because of disorientation within the cave system. That is a quiet sentence, but inside it is a terrifying image. A group of divers turning in the darkness, torch beams cutting through disturbed water, gauges being checked again and again, a passage that looks like the way out but is not, a sandy floor rising into the water, the realization that the surface still exists above them, but they cannot reach it. The recovery took several days. 2 victims were brought out first, then the remaining 2. Each movement through the cave had to be slow, disciplined, and controlled. The Finnish team transported the victims through narrow passages while managing visibility, entanglement risk, depth, and decompression. On the final operational dive, they returned to remove guide lines and equipment used during the recovery. They also recovered materials that could help investigators understand what happened. The cave was no longer only a dive site. It was evidence, dive computers, cameras, gear configuration, gas choices, permissions, planning, and the exact road taken would all matter. Authorities in both the Maldives and Italy continued investigating. There were questions about why the dive went so deep, why this cave was entered, who was officially part of the research mission, and whether the equipment and procedures matched the risk of the environment. But there is one question that may remain painfully human. Why did experienced people continue into a place where turning back would become so hard? Maybe they believed it was manageable. Maybe the first chamber made the cave seem less dangerous than it was. Maybe the visibility changed faster than expected. Maybe one problem led to another, until the situation became too complex to escape. The truth may be technical, but the tragedy is emotional, because these were people who loved the ocean. They did not enter it as enemies. They entered it with curiosity, knowledge, and trust. Monica had spent her career studying marine life. Muriel and Federico were tied to that same world of research. Georgia was there with her mother. Benedetti was part of the diving operation. Mahodi went in afterward, not for adventure, but because others needed to be brought home. The Maldives still looks the same from above. The water is still clear. The beaches are still bright. Tourists still fly in looking for paradise. But below the surface, at the Kunukandu, there is a darker truth hidden inside the reef. The sea can be beautiful and merciless at the same time. It does not need storms to become deadly. It does not need waves. Sometimes all it needs is a tunnel, a cloud of sand, and one lost direction in the dark. 5 divers entered the cave, chasing the underwater world they loved. A 6th followed because duty called him there. And beneath one of the most beautiful places on earth, the ocean kept its silence.